Somewhere between the Appalachian Mountains and the Rocky Mountains are the best damn people you're ever going to meet in your whole life.
Off the earth, except for Green Bay, Wisconsin.
North of the Mason-Dixon line, of course.
We're the Bungie kids with fusion rifles glowing. It's a podcast show with Thurk and D, Space Magic.
Welcome to the Bungie Podcast. My name is Deej. I'm joined by my co-hosts. This is my first ever Bungie podcast. We are coming to you from the depths of our studio, from the room where the audio team records the sound effects that will go into your game. Today, the sound effects are us talking about this game. This is the first.
This is a swank room by podcast standards.
Pretty good.
If I will say so. Usually, we're tucked in a conference room. This is nice. We've got padded walls in here. We've got carpet.
One of my co-hosts is a veteran of the Bungie podcast. That would be Irk.
I did a few. I think the last one we did was December 21st, 2010. A good 2 years, 8 months, and 22 days ago. So being dark sucks. It's nice to turn the lights back on, get the mics up and going. Excited.
It's what we've been waiting for.
Got a new podcast theme song courtee of the illustrious Jake Lauer of Reddit fame, which is absolutely amazing.
It's incredible. You never expect that to out of a bunch of nerds in a floor, all of a sudden comes out of
an indie rock star,
out of nowhere.
An internet rock sensation.
Perhaps Marty will forgive him for supplanting him with a better jingle, I might say.
No comment.
No comment. Right. Marty's not going to listen to the podcast.
Are you kidding me?
And then John Stevan,
Hello.
call sign House Salon,
It's my gamer tag, but yeah.
graphic designer on Bungie.net.
We just go with John.
Yeah.
Or
that's
Hal.
fine. Hal's fine.
Yeah, before we kicked it off, I wanted to do a little quick shout-out. We over those 2 years, 8 months of darkness, there were 3 guys that were keeping our official podcast group from descending into chaos and madness. Hopefully this podcast is going to make them all very happy, but big shout-outs to Switch, Voguei, and Red161991, which is probably his birthday, which makes him a very...
I see what you did there.
He's exposed. He's out in the open.
But huge props, man. It's awesome that we have some fans that'll go out there and pick up the reins.
Yeah, for sure.
We were dark and we weren't doing a whole lot, so it was hard for us to get in there and pay attention while we were heads down working on stuff. And they picked up our slack and made sure that everything was running smoothly and that the people there were able to sound off and have a clean, well-lit place to have communication. That's awesome.
We've been teasing the reemergence of the podcast for the past couple of days in that same private group. So
I've been teasing for weeks.
Yeah, you have.
I've been
You've
itching to
up
get
on
this
Twitter.
going, and then I was trying to get it going, and then we went to Germany and Vegas, and it just got a little whirlwind, a little bit crazy, but we lost all the equipment. We found it again. We didn't have a room. We've got a room now, so yeah, it's the pains we go to put together a podcast are great, and hopefully people enjoy it. I think we've got a pretty good show today, too.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll see how frequently we can keep this rolling. But today...
I think we're going to do one a week. That's what you said, right?
That's never what I said. I never
Don't
made
make
that
the internet a promise.
Yeah. Today, the most important thing is that we will be talking about weaponry. We have a couple of very special guests to come down and talk to us about the guns of destiny, what purpose they will serve, what histories they can boast, and just the basic idea as to how this action game will function like a shooter.
Yeah, we've got a lot of new stuff in the mix too, right? So there's a lot of things I think people expect out of a Bungie shooter, and certainly we're going to deliver some of that stuff, but we're going to bring in Josh Hamrick, one of our sandbox designers, and Tom Doyle, our sort of resident gunsmith, gun expert.
The first time I met him was after a team meeting, and he came out in his leather jacket, and I thought, who's this guy? And then I overheard him say, the heavy gun really needs to be belt-fed. He immediately had my attention. I was like, really?
And he says it was like pointing his pipe at Steve Scott, talking to him.
I think it was a moment a lot like that, yeah. And with that, now that his reputation precedes him, let's bring him into the room, and we'll put him in the hot seat and start asking him some questions.
Let's do it.
Right now in the hot seat, we are joined by Tom Doyle. Tom, you are an art lead at Bungie.
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
Explain your title.
Explain my title.
And your sunglasses.
Right, I'm the artist in charge of Combat Sandbox, weapons, vehicles, sometimes abilities. But yeah, predominantly it's like industrial design objects, and work on the artwork that the players get to use as tools in the game.
So guns? Is that guns?
Basically
Gun.
everything we need to kill.
Yes.
Don't call them tools, they're guns.
Illegal arms dealer from
Yeah.
the 31st century.
Nice.
So are you passionate about your work? Are you a gun guy? Are you do you celebrate guns?
Yeah, is this a hobby?
Is it a hobby
Turned
you're into,
job?
or did you just sort of migrate in through?
Well, when I first came to Bungie, I was an environment artist, and I went to school for some industrial design, so I'm really familiar with product design and stuff like that. So, I mean, I definitely love any and all things mechanical, and yeah, I think I just kind of found a home on the weapon and vehicle team just because my background in it and my interests. I definitely have an interest in game design itself,
Yeah,
and the weapons and the vehicles are a really good way of kind of expressing that part of my creativity, but also just visual design as well. So.
Yeah, I got hats off. They look right now as they stand before they ship. They look amazing. Like they look awesome. I love the design of it. The art pass in the game as a whole. They fit right in. They feel futuristic, but they feel real at the same time. Like they have that feeling to them, right?
Well, yeah, we had like from Halo, you had the very, I mean, obviously different palettes, but if you just look at the sort of hero weapons, the UNSC weapons, they're very military, industrial complex, and now we've got these sort of this great mix, and you guys are just able to play around in the space. So like what's the difference like coming out from a very defined palette of weapons and moving into like a clean slate? Like how did you approach that starting in? It seems like it could be pretty daunting, but it sounds like it'd be pretty exciting too, right?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely was pretty daunting, and absolutely when you make anything new for the first time, it's exciting. With Halo, it was very much a military space fantasy game.
Yep.
And Destiny is absolutely a space fantasy game, but something that was important to the team was in the same way that when you looked at the Covenant weapons and the UNSC weapons in the game, there was this kind of polarity between I know what this is, and in fact I know what it does, and I know how it behaves before I even pull the trigger the first time.
Yeah, there's an inference that can be made just by looking at it, right?
Yeah. We refer to that as affordance.
Right. Yep.
I know what it is before I even use it. The Warthog's a classic example of that when we built it. It was like, before you even put your right foot on the gas,
yeah.
you knew exactly how
You don't go, can I run a guy over with this? You
Yeah.
just do it.
and it was
Your first Halo LAN party was meet me near the Jeep. It's like, I'm not going to correct this guy because I like where his head's at.
Yes. Well, you want those things to be, intrinsic, for the player. And, in the previous game we had the good guy guns and the bad guy guns, and, there's a certain amount of that in this game. But we're trying to tell a much larger story in a much richer kind of fiction. And the weapons are, they're the first thing you see.
Yeah.
They're the things that are some of the most persistent forms of artwork in the game. So therefore, it's kind of like one of the loudest channels to tell those little stories in Destiny.
First thing through the door, as they say.
Yes, first thing through the door. The only other art that's more persistent is the UI, in the game, right?
Obviously, we talked about like the Warthog and UNSC weapons, and some of those things became iconic, right? They just became something in the sandbox that had to be there. Players had these stories about them, or had like an affinity or a love for those things. Like when you start and like when you approach a design for a new weapon, like how do you frame that up? Is there like a conversation that's happening between you and design, or are you left to sort of go off and explore like the crazy ideas that come into your head and sort of think about the different palettes you might want to pull from? Like what's that process like? Where does it start, and how do you get to a sort of a finished product that you're satisfied with? That's a really small question, I know, but
No. It's a great question. I mean, something that Bungie has always done really well is, and me and other people at the studio, or like Pete, we'll talk about the colliding. People come to Bungie because they're passionate about games, they're passionate about art, engineering, design, the whole thing. And when it came to creating what is Excalibur, in this game, and using the Excalibur method for the weapons. It definitely came from multiple sources. Sometimes they came simply from a name. Like a few weeks ago, we had David put together the kind of expose feature on Red Death, and really that weapon came from 2 words.
Just the name itself. Yeah, that's cool.
And you kind of go crazy, thinking about like what does that really mean, and you try to do something that kind of typifies that. Josh Hamrick, Tyson Green, they'll have certain investment goals or sandbox design goals, and they have their input, and they'll come to the group with all these awesome ideas, and just as much as that printed word on the page, that gets your kind of juices flowing, and sometimes it just comes from purely from art, right? There's definitely a fair share of exotics that came completely from like the art crew as well, which was like, oh man, we want to tell this visual story in the game.
I mean, that's the special thing that you notice now, especially like either going through playing the game now or going through the Art Depot or something like that, is being able to see like, man, I can see what they were thinking about when they made this gun. I can see like oh my god, that thing's got horns, or this thing is dripping with like, oh my god, like
I actually
amazing.
Squat Art Depots, right? Like I spent an awful lot of time in yours. I spent an awful lot of time in like Goldsworthy's, right? There are certain people that I just know are like not only do they put a lot of stuff in their depot, but there's just a lot of stuff that I'm super interested in. I think it's really cool to see. Like I know Deej has been showing off a lot of like the more exotic stuff, which is sort of the really high tier, really stylized, really fun things that do have names. But I know this week we showed off like the Duke Mark 44, which is not an exotic. It's a pretty standard weapon, right? But I remember the first time I popped that sucker out and had that amazing like flip animation, and even just like the reloads of the chambering. Like all the weapons seem to have this really cool like I don't want to say iconic because that's jumping the gun a little bit, pardon the pun, but it just feels like they're rich. They have a history. Like I pick it up, it looks like it's been used or could be passed down. Somebody oiled this gun and cared for it, and it's a little bit scuffed, but it just feels so cool.
It's a lightsaber in a sense where it's like it was built, it was put together by the person that had it, right? Like it was customized and it was tweaked. And
Definitely. I mean, we were early on. There was some really beautiful aspirational artwork for what the city would look like under the Traveler, like really kind of like street level stuff. Most of the imagery that the public's seen at this point have been up in the towers, up in Mount Olympus. Some of these images were very much down at the pedestrian level, and
like in the streets, right?
In
with
the streets,
the vendors
right?
and
Well, that's just to use that word, right? Like we thought of the gun bazaars in other parts of the world and in places where there's military conflicts, and we were thinking, man, there's some master craftsman who's putting together your Duke.
Yeah, how much do you guys think about that? Because like a lot of times, obviously there's like graphic design, there's brand decals. Like, do you guys flesh those stories out? Is that important for you guys to understand? Sort of like there are different manufacturers in the world, and they produce weapons, and these weapons have a certain visual language. Like, are you guys building those stories out? Like,
yes,
so you guys are like sort of writing fiction on your own, right?
Yes. Like obviously we have. Guys like Eric Rabb on the team who definitely kind of helps corral it into something that is approved and appropriately Destiny. But there is a lot of what I referred to as implied fiction in the weapons. Like I just told you the story of the gun market. Well, unless you have depot access and are at Bungie, you never saw that concept of the bazaar. But we want to feel like there are these dudes underneath the city who are craftsmen, no different than a guy who forges a katana, and you almost expect to see on the bottom of the Duke the armor sealed that is his.
Yatori Hanzo.
Exactly.
I mean, you look at something like the Gallarhorn, you see something that is ornate. You see somebody who was an artist that made this weapon. You look at the Thunderlord. You can see somebody who was kit bashing with, old and new tech.
A hot
and it's
rod
like,
guy.
Yeah, exactly. This gun has no business having some of these components bolted to the side of it, but someone took stock issue and just started tinkering. It's like, and here you go, straight from my hands to yours. And a lot of, the stuff from your own notes have made it into those Destiny drawing board features. So from the drawing board comes more than just lines and shapes and colors. It's imagination. It's what sort of story does this gun tell, just the same way as a character or a space station or something else that's in this world of Destiny.
Yeah, I mean, the story around the Bungie story, right, has always been about like the tip of the iceberg, sort of setting someone's imagination on fire. It's just super cool to see that like manifest itself in the different guns, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and the fact that it's still like it works, right? Like it just even in studio, right? Like the people who can like work on this things like and just put it there, and then like everyone in the studio's like, oh my god, what is that? I need to know what that is, and it sets a fire in it. It gets everyone excited because it shows the level of detail and the level of care that goes into everything, you know.
Well, it's you said it. It's sort of a craftsmanship that goes into it. It feels handmade because it effectively is, right?
Yeah.
I think that's actually an interesting segue because we've had a lot of people ask us about the weapons we've talked about. I mean, we haven't put a number on the weapons, and I think we've sort of been deliberate about not doing that, right? But I mean, what's the sort of process you guys go about in building these weapons? Are they sort of procedurally generated on the fly in the world? Are you guys handcrafting every single one of them, thinking about every gun? Do you inspect everything, name everything? Like, what's the process like for getting a big sort of palette that satisfies Hamrick, satisfies Tyson, as you said earlier, and will ultimately satisfy players? Like, how do you go about making sure those things are, up to your quality bar?
Well, in order to get, Bungie quality, with the weapons, at first we had kind of entertained a more procedural kind of construction method, and we thought, yeah, this is really good. It helps expedite creating the weapons, but what it does is it does it at the cost of the uniqueness of it.
Yeah.
And we want each weapon to feel like this awesome sculptural kind of piece. And that's really important, right? You want to see people's fingerprints on the weapons, and if it's just simply a jigsawed Yahtzee version of a gun,
Componentized.
componentized, and we definitely reuse parts and are really crafty about using pieces in cool new ways. So you may have seen this gun before, but with a few simple additive pieces, it completely feels like a different sidearm altogether. And so I mean. Yeah, I kind of lost count of how many weapons are in the game, but every single weapon in Destiny is, handcrafted, hand-named. Me and the guys, we always refer to when we're making the weapon arrangements as we're wrapping presents.
Nice.
You know what I mean? Like there's no just
somebody's gonna get this and they're gonna look at it. They're gonna take it out of the package. They're gonna watch its hero animation. They're gonna reload it. They're gonna wow, that's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And these aren't just guns that we lay around on the battlefield and invite you to run around and go pick up. You go earn these guns. You own these guns. They're yours.
Yep. To bring it back to the the Excalibur metaphor. Like in Halo, we had this military fantasy, military industrial complex future where all the battle rifles were stamped the same way. Every single Spartan laser was made, to spec. Whereas in Destiny, to use the buzz, phrase from our, become legend. And we want every single one of those things to kind of heighten that. And instead of just finding some freshly minted weapon out of a case, you're finding these things out in the world. And, it's kind of corny, but it is kind of like a metaphor with what the overall arc of Destiny is, right?
Yeah.
Which is reclaiming what was yours.
Yeah, going out in the world, exploring. Yeah, taking your weapons back from your enemy's cold dead hands, that sort of thing, right?
Well, it also gives you a sense of lived-inness. There's the whole world feels that it's actually like something someone's. It's persistent. It's been there before you. It'll be there after you, right? It gives you a sense of depth. Like you said, it's not it's not an assembly line of things that are coming off. And that's a special feeling. It's very rare that I actually feel that in any kind of large scale game like that. Generally, you just see weapons reused and repurposed and things like that. It's like, oh, I have that weapon, but now it does this, and it's like, oh, it's the same thing now. I don't know which one's which. So, it's nice to see that we don't have that problem necessarily going forward with the arsenal that we have now.
Yeah, I think one of the cool things I've sort of picked up on as well, just watching you guys work, is I came in, Halo was well established, and anytime you guys would tinker with or introduce a weapon, you had to sort of worry about, like, how does this fit in the world? Why didn't they have DMRs in Halo 1 on? Like, what happened to the 3-shot magnums? Like, what's going on here, right? You had to have some fictional justification, and I think those things are important, and we obviously spend a lot of time thinking about how we ground everything and root it in a fiction that makes sense and has a canonical sense to it. But, like, it seems like you guys are doing a lot more sort of exploring, right? Being a little bit more free with the ideas. Like, we've got a world where you have a very sleek-looking military, burst fire automatic weapon alongside a rocket launcher that has gilded wolves on it. Are you guys able to just like think about any crazy shit you want to throw out there? And
pretty much anything. The simple answer is like we're constrained by our own imaginations with this game. In the Halo games, it was very much like it was, Covenant Militaria, human Militaria.
Yeah.
And if they did not fit into one of those two camps, we would refer to those weapons as found weapons, something that you would like pick up off the ground. I think probably the best example of this in the previous games was like the Sentinel beam. You'd kill the Sentinel and you'd pick up his weapon, and that was like a found weapon. Sure. Whereas in this game, we're trying to make every single weapon a legend.
Right.
And the only way that you can do that is by making them as absolutely distinct as humanly possible. So it's the constraint is just our imagination, not what fits into some box like it did in the previous games.
So, what's your favorite?
I was just gonna ask.
My favorite one, for me personally, my favorite one is The Last Word. I don't know, like, I grew up like watching John Ford movies with my dad, and there is something about the frontier survivalist.
The sandalwood grip, gilded,
that fantasy.
sort of filigreed inlay, gunslinger.
Yes, yeah. And that's why, my favorite character to play is the hunter, because, it's so different than the other type of characters that you'd occupy in Bungie games. And there's something about that as like it's a badge, right? It's like a cop's badge.
Or it's heritage,
exactly.
right?
It's the sheriff's silver, star, basically.
I don't think we've shown The Last Word yet.
Nope.
You have to.
Coming soon
Guess
to a
we
drawing
do it
board near
next
you.
week.
Yeah.
No, actually, I think we did show the concept at Barry's.
Oh, did we? Okay, cool. At the
GDC.
GDC talk.
Yeah.
People have seen Thorn, I know. I don't, and I've had requests like,
We'll have
should
to go
tell us
back now
more
and
about
look.
Thorn, show us Thorn. Thorn's pretty badass.
Yeah, Thorn is the exact opposite of The Last Word.
Yes.
We had an image early on, which was Thorn crisscrossed with The Last Word, and it kind of showed the yin and the yang of the Destiny universe, you know what I mean, in pistol form.
It's like a hand cannon carved out of like an obsidian dark heart.
Yeah.
It's menacing. It's evil.
Yeah,
You probably don't want to hold on to it for too long. It's probably a bad omen. And then you look at The Last Word, and it's like that's a hero's weapon, right?
Yeah.
That's something that you pass down from
It was
father to son.
It was in a velvet case.
Yeah.
That's
So
the
cool.
feeling that we wanted.
It's a lawman's trophy.
Yes. And that's what you're doing in the game, right? You're doing your best to survive under these insane conditions, but not only survive, but to reclaim.
So do you find that you're like driven to select your weapon based on its sort of story? Are you the kind of person that you're sort of playing an archetype and you're sort of going out there, or do you actually like also the gameplay of the hand cannon?
I like the gameplay of the hand cannon. I think it's we've always done like slide action, pistols, in our previous games, and this was the first time that we did a tried and true revolver.
Yep.
And there's something cool about seeing, the chamber come out, the hammer on the back. It has like this very kinetic animation in first person. Like,
Well, that was the thing that blew me away. Like seeing that for the first time is like easing back the trigger or whatever I was doing, and like just seeing the hammer.
The hammer cock,
Like,
yeah.
nice and
I remember
slow,
Travis
like,
doing that. We were prepping for E3, and he did that for the first time. I was like, no way.
Yeah, like then
That's so cool.
The chamber rotates as the hammer comes back, and you're just like, you can play with it, and you're just like, oh, I'm just sit there and do that for like 10 minutes. It looks awesome.
It's kind of interesting, me and David Helsby, who's our crack shot animator. working on the FP weapon animations, he and I were talking about like what things can we do with the exotic weapons from a performance standpoint. We're like, oh my god, it would be so awesome if we could actually lock the hammer on the last word. So like if you're looking at somebody, you could actually draw it back. You know what I mean? And then put it back when you wanted to. Just kind of show them what you're all about.
Yeah, D just looking at you with just awe. It's just like drooling in the floor.
I'm just falling into your eyes right now. And
Is there a puddle underneath you?
She got excited.
I get
Leave
sweaty.
alone.
I get my hands sweat.
I get sweaty.
When we talk about guns, my hands sweat.
Somehow you made it even more gross.
And all this conversation has been about revolvers. I mean, just all of this talk about different types of hand cannons, and the different sort of visceral role play that comes from that. But we could talk about, assault rifles. We could talk about sniper rifles. We could talk about shotguns. I mean, you guys have a really dense palette, and you've designed in a lot of different directions, in different categories, different classes. Every single gun occupies its own space in the spectrum and then can be splintered off in a bunch of different branches and customized that way. I mean, you guys are giving people a lot of different ways to express themselves.
It's the weapon is that's what's great about Destiny, right? Is like the weapon itself can be a reflection of your player psychology. Like if you want to feel like a gilded knight, you'll carry Gallarhorn. If you want to feel like some son of a bitch bandit, you will carry Red Death. Like if you want to feel like some future tech soldier, you'll carry the hard light. Like each one of these weapons, lets the player kind of imprint himself on the weapon, and definitely is a bit of a compass for who he wants to be in the Destiny world.
Yeah, sort of an archetype they're playing, right? Like, which hero do you want to be? And it's cool, too, that we're able to not only deliver that, like, player fantasy of who I am and how I project my ego into the world, but you can still look at that weapon and know what it's going to do, right? You can still see it and go, oh, okay, that's a rocket launcher, right? Like,
shoot wolves.
When you're working on these things, you're at the drawing board, you're working on creating these new weapons, do you have influences that you draw from? Do you have, films that, you've looked at? Like I look at the Gallarhorn, it almost reminds me of something that could have come out of like Dune, out of like House Carino or something like that. Are there other, forms of fiction that you've loved in the past that you're like, I kind of want to riff on that, or I want to borrow from that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, there, in a game where you have to create in near infinite number of weapons, you will go to every single well that you can to get inspiration from, right? Like earlier I was talking about, like, John Ford and the Western fantasy, definitely, Thorn is the exact opposite of that. It is chaos. So we were looking at, all these, Giger and all these other kind of like.
I was going to say Krull.
Krull. Oh, yeah. No.
Kind of insectoid.
Insectoid, right? We looked at kind of bandit weapons for Red Death. We looked at Crusader Knights, for Gallarhorn, or gladiatorial, kind of armor and filigree and stuff like that. The idea of the decorated warrior, and not like in a military officer sense. Like, no, this guy will get out of the stands and fight you. You know what I mean? Like,
he's a walking legend.
He is a walking legend, and but yeah, I mean, gosh, it goes all over the place, from iconic pistols and weapons, whether it's like Deckard's sidearm in Blade Runner or RoboCop's tarted up Desert Eagle. You know what I mean? Like it's all over the place, right? Obviously, Aliens is incredibly influential, and so is Star Wars. But I mean, they come from anywhere and everywhere. Films, comics, other games. Obviously we can't talk too much about the competition, but like it comes from everywhere. Sure. I know that's probably a shitty blanket answer, but when you have to create an infinite number of guns, you will go anywhere and everywhere to get that idea.
And that's why they call them influences. I mean, obviously, you look at something, you can point to something and say, that's cool, that speaks to me. I can borrow from it, and I can turn it into something new and make it my own, and give it to someone else and see what they do with it from there.
Yeah, and we looked at, you know, artists who maybe were in vogue, you know, maybe a long time ago. Like obviously, you know, something that was an artist that was very influential to me for describing a lot of the base weapons was John Berkey. He's one of my favorite artists of all time, and like early on, typically when John would do paintings, he would always describe these big, massive ships, these space scenes, and like, you know, to say that they're the size of a Star Destroyer would be an understatement.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, John's artwork is so based around describing these huge epic scale designs. You know, one of our challenges was like, well, how do we take something that's the size, you know what I mean, of a battleship, and get all those cues and get that emotion into something that you can carry in your back pocket, you know. But yeah, I mean, you know, well, we're definitely influenced by a lot of kind of avant-garde 70s futurists, you know. Even before kind of like even like Sid Mead and those guys, we were, you know, Dune, you know what I mean, is another you know thing, like those Dune covers. You know, it's like, oh man, you know, how do we turn that into something that's influenced by but still uniquely ours?
Yeah, it's always a really challenging question. We get it a lot doing like the press circuit, right? Everybody goes,
Sure.
like, what are you guys influenced by? And it's like, you know, there are a lot of
The
people who
Stones,
work
the
here,
Beatles.
and just about every one of them is ravenous, right? They're out there consuming a lot of art and a lot of television. You get like, you know, everything. You talk to Barry, and he's got like, you know, Peter Grick, and then he's got Thundar the Barbarians in his back pocket, and it's just like the range that he's able to pull from is cool. And I think the challenge has always been like, how do you take all of those things and really focus on like how we take the cues and the sort of style or tone pieces that we want and make them distinctly Destiny, right? And that's always a super huge challenge, to not let an influence sort of override and imprint itself so much that people look at it immediately and go, oh, you lifted that, right?
yeah.
You've got to put your own stamp and make it your own signature. I think it's cool to see, like, and I said this earlier, but there's a huge palette of not just guns, but like, you know, buildings and you know, set pieces and places you can go in the world, gear or armor, and they feel very unique and distinct and pull from a lot of different places, but they all feel like they belong in the world, right? They all feel rooted in some way, whether it's through the fiction they tell or just the way it looks, like the visual appearance.
You know, that was something that, you know, on a bigger level, you know, for the game, that was it was essential up front, is like, in order to, you know, be a knight fighting for humanity, there had to be things around that you relate to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's too abstract, and you can't feel that theme as loudly as you could. You know, like you said, whether it's graphic design on a building, a combatant character, a cool piece of, you know, helmet gear that a character may pick up, or an exotic weapon, is like, we want that to be relatable and to be a touchstone for people, because that's so important for Destiny, right? Is like, you know, in the Halo games, we would say, oh, you're fighting for humanity, but like, in this game, humanity and what it created is so much more on your doorstep than it is in our previous games.
Yeah.
Sure.
When you say you want these weapons to be relatable, I mean, they already are. You know, we're sharing your concepts. We're sharing some of your thinking behind the design of these weapons. People look at them, you know, and the comments that I intercept are usually things like, I want that. Where can I get that? You know, and we'll have good answers for all of those questions. And it's great that, you know, you've got all these fish hooks in our game that will compel these people to, you know, maybe they've only been a multiplayer type of guy. Maybe they're competitive multiplayer, they're PvP, and then they see someone stride in with something that they've never got to shoot before, and they'll say, where'd you get that? And so then we can kind of lure them out of their comfort zones and send them to Mars and send them to Venus, because buried in the dust of those shattered places are, you know, the pearls that they're going to want to hold in their hand and use them to kill other people.
Absolutely, you know, and I think it, you know, the weapons and the gear, the, you know, common weapons, exotic weapons, the player gear, like, something that was really important early on was when you saw somebody in the game and they had one of these things, it really was not only a metric of how far they've played in the game, but also the type of activities that they like to engage in.
Yeah.
For example, like one of the weapons that we showcased for E3 is a PvP weapon. Well, you know what? The only way to get that weapon is by fighting in the arena. And when you see somebody in the game that has this weapon slung over their back, you know that they're a dogfighter.
Tom, the things that you're designing are already resonating with people. We love playing with them in the studio. We love looking at your art. So please keep sharing with us your ideas. People want to see more.
I'm incredibly proud of what the team's been able to put on the screen. You know, like not only in the quality but the quantity of it as well. You know, I'm proud of like the exotic weapons and the gameplay. You know that are associated with them. You know, I'm proud of like the little, you know, to bring it back around again, I'm proud of those little stories that the weapons tell. And, you know, I think, you know, going forward, it's just going to get crazier and crazier. The cement's starting to dry, you know, a little bit. And we're really happy with how things are coming into place now.
Awesome. Yeah, what I've seen, what I think what we have all played recently is that, you know, no one has the same gun yet. So that is
everyone's a snowflake.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Tom.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming by.
Thanks, guys.
In the hot seat at this moment is Josh Hamrick. Josh, tell us what you do for Bungie.
I am a
You don't even
gameplay
know.
designer. I do know. I was trying to decide. I mostly make weapons. I also kind of help make everything else, but my primary focus.
Well, by
is
make,
still
do you mean
weapons.
like you actually go in there and model?
You're
it, or
gonna
you
do this.
the
Yeah.
rules? Like, I mean, like what? Let's get a better framework of what we're talking about.
There are people that make them pretty and or physical,
Okay.
and I make them awesome.
Oh.
Actually, that's not true.
That-
Audio
that's-
makes them awesome. Effects also makes them awesome. But I make them work. Damn it.
You make them what they are. You've got your fingers on the knobs that determine how powerful they are, how much
Right.
damage they do.
Nobody's gonna get mad at Tom Doyle. Nobody's gonna
Right.
get mad at Seapaw.
Guns
Gonna
look
get mad at
sweet.
me.
They sound awesome.
That's right.
I
The
think the
internet.
kids are
That's
going to love
pretty
you,
much my
Yeah.
job.
to be quite
Based on what I
honest.
saw.
So, taking us back into the world of
never read this
Halo,
book.
Yes.
right? The long-established two-weapon system. We're running around. I've got my two trusty weapons. I pick
Codenamed
them up on the
Smiggle.
ground. Codename Smiggle. I carry my rocket launcher by backpacking that sucker all over the place. That's gone, right?
Yeah.
New World Order. What are we
Yes.
doing? Why did we do that? What are we doing?
We want you to form a relationship with your weapon. We want you to fall in love with it. We want you to fondle it. Whatever you're into, really.
Deej is really into fondling weapons.
I cradle my weapons
so his
more than I
thing.
fondle
I
them.
know that you do.
I cradle them, I stroke them.
Would they call it cradling or would they call it fondling, dude?
I don't understand what you're talking about.
So we want you to form a relationship in a way that you couldn't in Halo before, right? In Halo, there were, we'll say 7 guns because that feels right, even though it's not. So you had 7 weapons.
It's a
and
limited
everybody,
subset of weapons that
right.
you were either given on a map or you would find throughout your mission.
Yeah, and they were always, even though they were always a different gun, they were always the same gun. So there were 15 ARs on the map. They were all the same AR. You
Yep.
would find one of them and use it to your liking. And we're going a different way so that you find an AR that somebody else may find too eventually, right? But
Sure.
there's a very good chance that the 4 of us sitting here might each have a different variant on
Yep.
an AR. And so we want you to spend much longer with the weapons and enjoy them. And so because of that, we don't have that same model of kind of pick and choose like we used to.
Is it so that there's like supposed to be a high turnover rate? I mean, like, do you want to consume more and more guns? Is that kind of the goal of having such a huge breadth of different weapons and different weapon types?
So it's kind of in between. It's part high turnover rate in just terms of you're gonna see a lot of different types, but it's also low turnover in that you're gonna spend a lot more quality time with the weapon than you did in
More
Halo.
Deej time with my gun?
More Deej time, exactly. And so we need to, in order to do that, we need you to stick with the weapon for a while. And if we're gonna force you to stick with the weapon for a while, we don't really force you, but if we're gonna ask you to stick with a weapon for a while, then we wanted to give you more to do more
That's an
weapons
important
fall
point to
back
make
on.
too, because you're not forcing anybody to do anything. In
Yeah,
Halo,
no.
you forced me to shoot the BR, and as many people who've played Halo with me can attest,
Yeah,
I
it's not
was
happening.
I
It's
was
no
no
good.
good at it. But
Can you shoot from the driver's seat of a Warthog?
nope,
No.
thank goodness. That was what I used as my excuse.
You can snipe from a Revenant and reach.
Yep, you can.
But you're giving people control over the
Jason
weapon
John's
that
fault.
they have when they step onto the battlefield, and you're giving them control over which weapons that they hold in reserve on
Correct.
their back or in their side holster. And
Yep. And
Or
we-
even on their avatar, right? So there's another
Yep.
change that we've introduced. We say 3-weapon system, but that's sort of the 3 weapons that you have out and at the ready. But you can, I should caveat this that everything that we're talking about is in flux.
we
But
totally die. Yeah.
but for right now, like I can have 2 secondary weapons that I'm sort of upgrading and moving between. I can have
Yeah.
I can have more than 3 weapons with me at any given time. They're just not easily accessible while
Right.
in
We do
combat.
some things to sort of talk you out of switching to them mid combat because we don't want you to walk into an encounter with every gun in the game. 'Cause it turns
Sure.
out that falls down. It's
Yeah,
not as
yeah.
fun.
I mean, if you're in your avatar build, you're not going to fare too well in
Well, I mean,
competitive multiplayer, are you?
But you
right
can
now-
do that. I mean, you
Sure.
can go in there with each of our AR types, which you guys can totally edit right here. So you can have an assault rifle, a pulse rifle, and a scout rifle all in your bag, right? But be using the auto rifle, and at any point you could technically switch to the scout. And I'm gonna do some stuff to talk you out of doing that,
Right.
because I don't want you to have access to all that in the same encounter, but it is there. And you can absolutely, from encounter to counter, that encounter's over, and I'm gonna spend a little bit of time with the scout rifle and beef it up a little bit. Like you can keep switching back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, like to me, there's something alluring to being able to do that. You add different like burst fire rates onto my gun. It's
Right.
the same type of like, hey, I got this whole other gun that
Right.
has a different fire rate, and I can do this, whatever. And like, it's also just fun too, right? Like, I find a cool shotgun, and I may hate the shotgun, but I love the way it sounds, and I love the way my enemies die, and so I may just keep it just to
Right, or it
play
might
around
be
with.
something that you take into like a strike, right?
Right,
And
yeah.
then when you go into
Right,
PvP,
different-
it's like I'm going over to the pulse, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just different play style, different maps.
For sure.
And
Right.
if you get into a map and you're like, man, this is a better shotgun map, and you've
Yep.
brought a shotgun along, you can equip that. Now you might have to run off and find ammo for it immediately because I'm gonna totally rob you, but you can do that, and then you have the ability to switch it. So it gave us a lot more flexibility, while at the same time also giving us the investment system that we were looking for to get
Sure.
you to dive in deeper on weapons and think about how you wanted to play them and what you wanted to do with them. And
So-
the 3-weapon system is all about categorizing those into what we would consider usable classes, like mindsets even of guns. And so
Yeah.
your primary weapons are like the thing that's going to be in your hand 80% of the time.
Yep.
And we're doing some stuff to kind of push you even more to do that, which I won't talk about, but I'm going to totally tease. and then the special weapons are all about like it said in that Vidoc, where my head is incredibly round.
Yeah, you do have a
Um,
very round head.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not just in the Vidoc.
I mean, like
by the
it
way.
is.
No, it
Right.
is
No,
just
right
for
here,
Vidoc. No,
right here.
it is-
Symmetrically
Yeah.
round. It's
Yeah.
impressive.
I don't. They say that the camera adds like 40 degrees of
No,
roundness.
your head is
That's
very
what I
Yeah,
heard.
no, because it's 360 degrees of roundness. I'm sure they say
That
that.
depends on the camera.
Right.
John.
No. Yeah.
Those are 3D cameras.
Yeah, right.
And so the specials are about the special occasions that you
Hmm.
want to use them. Deej has different meaning for that than we do.
Correct.
every day is a special occasion. When you have a belt-fed heavy machine gun strapped to your back, every day is special.
Well, but see, that's a heavy, Deej. That's
Yeah.
a heavy.
Yeah.
This is.
Yeah, there's just something cool about being able to have like these weapons that you rely on and depend on, and knowing that in your back pocket you've got this sort of uber weapon, and if you can score some ammo for it, you're gonna
Which
The
is-
heavy is pretty.
Which is
pretty
to what we
fun.
were talking about earlier with the 2-weapon system. Like, it actually gives you, like, man, I got the rocket launcher. I have 2 rockets, right? And, like, in Halo or something like that, and I spend them both, and then I'm out. I have
Yep.
the pistol
Right.
left, right? Whereas now it was like I still have my special, and I still have my primary weapon.
and
like,
it's
oh,
and it's
man.
yours. You
Yeah.
say my, right? It's
Yeah.
your rocket
Yeah, it
launcher,
is.
right?
No, it totally is
Which
your
is
rocket
awesome.
That's great.
So-
Yeah, it's
so-
super fun.
So what build are you rocking? What are you doing these days? Still Hunter?
I am still Hunter,
Yeah.
though Danny keeps giving me excuses to want to switch every once in a while.
We'll have to get him down here.
Yeah.
Danny
yeah,
Bulla, sandbox designer.
That's right. The sandbox
The
designer, I
sandbox
believe.
diviner.
Creator of Red
Sexy.
Dead Redemption. It's totally not true. Somehow that got out there in an article, but
I
totally
believe that
not
is true.
true.
I think it was his
He did work
idea,
on it,
the whole
but,
thing.
yeah.
His actual middle name is Redemption, so it's
Okay,
named.
that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's on his.
So-
It's an
so you
awesome
doing-
middle
freestyle,
name.
his freestyle album with Eric Rabb.
Oh God.
his God-given name.
It's-
That is
right.
something we should edit
That
out.
is
That,
amazing.
that is terrible. I never want to see anybody freestyle over Rock Lobster ever
Oh,
again.
dude, it's fantastic. fantastic.
That's awesome.
You get to see it once.
So I'm a hunter with the golden gun typically.
Nice.
Yeah.
So do you do magnums? What are you doing? Do you do magnums, Josh? Speaking of adding roundness, do you do the hand cannon?
I run a lot of hand cannon, and
Yeah.
I run I don't know what we're gonna finally name that thing. The laser blaster, the
Laser
fusion
blaster.
rifle.
Yeah.
The
Fusion rifle is what we got in the
The
podcast
Elliot
theme song.
Craze.
there you go.
It's
Okay.
been committed to song, so it's locked. You
This
can't
is me
change it.
seeking your
I wanna
approval for
change
calling
it.
it the fusion rifle now.
I want to change it to the particle cannon.
Nope.
But
All right.
You know what? There's a lot of that going around. Like,
Yeah.
Bullock came up to me after the Vidoc, and he's like, "Man, I'm really glad you guys baked Golden Gun in there because we didn't know what to call it. Now we're sticking with it."
That's what marketing does. We get out there and we cement things.
Yeah. What are you doing?
We
Hammering
commit.
some tent stakes into the ground. Those are going in pretty deep.
Somebody's got to commit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I keep trying to get Rob to change it, but
Yeah.
we have to rename it.
Yeah, you're crafty. You're sort of a peripheral player. You know, pretty sneaky. A lot of cat and mouse play. A lot of chess
Oh, you
out
wrote
there.
up a whole article about
I did.
me. That's right.
I'm more of a sort of. I try to force the situation. I run in there. I actually rocked a hand cannon build yesterday in last night's build, and yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Hand cannon feels good.
I like
And-
the bursts, man. The bursts are so good.
Well,
it feels so nice.
Less air,
Good.
right? Like you get the
There's just
little
something
cone
about
in
it.
the-
It's just like I'm a little baby, like in the mother's womb, and that's the heartbeat, right? It just
I-
feels so good.
I'm always gonna be a scout rifle. I'm gonna be the single shot.
Yeah.
The
And you're a
DMR.
scout guy.
Yes. And yeah, Richo is definitely a DMR guy. But the hand cannon, it's funny because the hand cannon to me fills that DMR role.
It's just so
the scout rifle's more
loud
like
and
a-
powerful right now.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. You guys gonna turn some knobs on that, or is it gonna stay where it's at?
Now that thing's making people happy. I
Yeah,
don't
you
think we're gonna go
talk
very
about
far with
the sort of Bungie legacy. Talking about that hand cannon, that thing is.
that. Yeah, I went ahead and Jason Jones did for Jason Jones. So
Yeah,
I don't think he's gonna.
I
feel
don't
the
think you
need to
can
turn
turn
it
the
up.
damage up anymore,
Yeah,
right?
no. I doubt
It's
it.
pretty
Yeah,
insane.
It's capped out.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I brought in the range. If he did anything, he would probably push the range out. But we'll see.
Based on Erk's comment, there's something I want to ask about the Bungie legacy, because people who are lovers of former Bungie games may remember those experiences where you're on a map, you need map control. You need to be able to move around the map and control different sectors in the map, because that's where the good stuff spawns. I want those rockets, I need to occupy this territory. I want that warthog, I need to occupy that territory. And that's how you kept people moving around and not just occupying
or the
same
Falcon.
folder.
Yeah, or create
Don't
focal
forget the
points.
Falcon.
Or the
Yeah.
Falcon for the honorable Rogue Squadron. You've mentioned a couple times that while I might be able to, sort of root through my luggage, pull my favorite weapon out of my inventory and equip it on my person in the middle of a match, you might send me running off to find ammo for that.
I did.
So can you elaborate on that? I mean,
Yeah.
is that how we are actually going to keep people sort of moving around?
This is a
and-
Bungie podcast exclusive coming up here.
Wow.
We need like a
nowhere.
little like sound effect.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. That is correct. So even though it's a very different system than the Halo mindset, especially with heavyweight weapons as of late, assuming we ship that way, they've been playing kind of that same way. And instead of looking for the rocket launcher spawn,
Yeah,
you're
they're
looking
like
for the heavy
second
spawn.
cousins, right?
Right.
There's
Yeah.
some systems, systemic things about it that feel the same. You
Right.
know, you'll hear people yell as we did yesterday, like, "No, my ammo!" you know,
Exactly, it's awesome. Yeah, so right now we've got the super beta version in, which is where you just flat lose it. Like when you
Yeah.
die, that's gone, and
Oh,
that
that's
will
so
remain.
Birthday party.
Exactly, and that's gonna stay. That will happen. But at least in the future, we'll drop your heavy. Like if Urk kills me, okay. If Urk kills Deej,
Yeah.
More likely.
If Urk kills John,
Not gonna happen.
if Urk kills somebody,
were you on the leaderboards yesterday? Because I didn't see your name up there.
I didn't play yesterday.
Oh,
but yeah.
it's a ready
So,
excuse
I
you
had-
have
Yeah,
there.
he's a
Yeah.
ship it and put it away and then go walk outside.
Hey, if you ever want a game, you know where to find me. So you'll drop it for, like if you kill the guy with heavy ammo, he'll drop his heavy ammo, and then you'll be able to pick it up and run heavy ammo for a while until you run out or you die or more comes up
And
on
to
the
be,
map.
I mean, like, and so my ammo is not predicated on what weapon I have. It's just like that ammo slot is for.
Yeah, right now we
heavy.
do 3 packages, of ammo, and it's primary and special and heavy, so that you don't. It just we didn't ever know what guns people were gonna have inside,
Right.
and trying
That
to
makes
build an
sense.
economy around
Yeah.
the constantly changing, and because it's not the Halo method of drop that gun, and like as long as that you find that gun, you get that ammo. So
Right.
we changed that around a little bit, but yeah, for sure. So heavy's gonna push you around, and it makes me super happy that people are freaking out when they die now with it.
That's a
'cause it
little,
feels
little
good.
honeypot
but,
sitting
like,
out there,
yeah,
man.
that's-
Not only does it push you around, but it's pushing other people
Correct.
around, so
That's
you
the
can
thing,
sit around
right?
that corner just sitting
Just
on them.
wait.
Yep.
I loved about playing yesterday for the little bit that I did is like it puts an onus on the person to be responsible. Like, not that I have to like be super meticulous and like take notes of like how much ammo I have, but like just note that I have it and make sure I use it before I die because
Right.
it's gonna be gone, right? Like,
Well, and
so
the,
if we
It's this
if
little
we
window
ship
of
that-
pressure, right?
Yeah,
you get
no,
it,
it
and you
does.
feel awesome, but you're also in the back of your head. You know somebody knows you're over there,
Yeah,
right? And you're
exactly. Yeah.
your head's on a swivel. You're ready to, like, all right,
exactly. And
Boom! No, my ammo.
in the current system, and I've been going back and forth. I almost hope we ship this way. You have to actually like get it, pull out your gun, and then reload your gun.
Yeah.
And because they're the heaviest, they have some of the longer reloads in the game, and so it is not the Halo method of first guy to the rocket launcher probably
Jump, turn,
wins
fire,
the fight.
win.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like almost certainly. He might kill himself, but he's almost certainly going to kill the guy behind him. And so you have to be a little more sure that you can get away before you go for it, which I currently like, but we'll see.
And for those of you listening at home or in your car or in class, in your ears, exactly, the operative phrase in that last statement is, I hope we ship this way. It's important to remind everyone that Destiny is pre-alpha. We're still having fun exploring what we want this thing to be. Everyone has better opinions as to what they hope the game is.
It's a fun caveat, but I think like the cool thing about the doing a podcast like this is we can get some guys in here like Josh and get the inside scoop on what we're doing. Everything is work in progress. That includes the stuff we put on our website, the things we say out there. Obviously, there's a solid vision of the game. I'm not implying that like we don't know what we're doing, but we play test this game every day, right? Like every time I play PvP, there's something a little bit different,
Yeah,
right?
like
You
everything
guys
gets
are
pushed
turning up
forward.
the fun.
Bungie Day,
Yeah.
Bungie Day, you took away our heavies.
We did, yeah. We
didn't get to
turned
play-
them off.
We didn't get to play with any heavies, and
Yeah, that was stupid.
That was super sad. I mean, we it was the marketing pod versus the BNet guys, and we crushed them pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, we were-
the Bungie Day build was there wasn't a lot of stuff you could do to turn a game once it started going
Yeah,
downhill.
once it started going downhill, it was pretty clear it was going downhill.
We
Inertia
beat-
in space. You fire a bullet in space, you can kill someone on Saturn.
Yeah,
Me and David Early and Kevin Yanis handedly beat 3 UI people 50-4.
they're
just-
artists, but they're delicate.
No,
fellows.
sorry, you are, not you.
Oh, you
Yeah,
are?
but either way, I mean that's even Hobson's not bad, but we
they're at
destroyed
charts.
them.
I'm gonna go on record that says Hobson's bad. I'm just gonna say that outright
That
on
was
the
Eric,
podcast.
not me, John. That was
Yeah, well, that wasn't me. Bullshit.
No, that was John Hobson. That was Irk.
Oh.
Not
Oh,
me.
that was Eric. Okay.
Yeah, you're
Yours
confused.
fine.
I am.
There are two people named
I'm
John in
sitting
this
on-
conversation.
I'm the only one sitting on a metal chair right now. I'm gonna get struck by
Yeah.
lightning and die. You guys will be fine. This is ridiculous.
Is it comfortable?
Your hair's
No,
not
it's
standing
not
up.
comfortable. You guys all get
We're in a
comfortable.
floating room, dude.
Yeah.
You're good.
But yeah, so I will agree. We hope that we ship it, and it's always amusing. Like for the last couple of weeks, I've been playing a build where the pulse rifle was king and everything
Oh,
else
yeah.
was
Yeah.
awful.
Yep.
Elliot's been.
And then today they walked over and it's like, "What did you do to the pulse rifle? Now the ARs." And
It's funny how quickly you turn. Like the first few games where something's been beefed up,
Yeah.
you're like, I hate this thing. What's going on? And then okay, I'll go get that weapon.
yeah, fine.
And then
I
you're
found
like,
one.
then they take it away later, and you're like, oh, this sucks now. It's just like it's so
But
fast
but
that
that's-
turn, that mental turn. Like
speaking from a perspective that DJ and I might share is like we don't as community members and like being on the outside like I barely got to ship Reach and been here through most of the Destiny, but like seeing that the arc of like, okay, we're gonna try it out here, and then the pendulum swings way
Yep.
over here, and seeing that like very fine tune, and now it's just small moves. I mean,
Yep.
granted, small
Yeah.
moves can affect.
Still big,
it's
but
wild
it's-
how
yeah,
like
yeah.
a tiny
Yeah.
little incremental step can
Yeah.
make a huge
Absolutely.
impact on
Yeah.
it. And it's cool to see the I mean, looking outside, like you're talking about, looking at the community and the sort of volumes and disparity of the feedback that
Yeah.
comes in to see the same thing happening internally, right? Like the different voices and the different people who some like I had an experience yesterday where I like slammed my controller down and I was like, I hate this, is terrible. I can't believe this is it. I can't believe who did this? Who even thought this was a good idea? And I literally walked into the kitchen and Sussman, who was in the game, is walking over with the biggest smile on his face, and he goes, "Wasn't it the funnest game you've ever played?" And I was just like, "Oh my god."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And conversely, you had the moment of sheer like tears when you were playing against Elliot. Like I never saw you laugh so hard and cry so hard. You were laughing like he was trying to get his ammo or trying to get a new ammo crate, and he just kept going for it. And you just kept doing it.
He's a comical man.
The thing about that, though, feels like you guys have kind of discovered this sort of best of both worlds, because I love having, as you said before, a relationship with my weapon. I like feeling like this is my gun. I've made decisions that make this gun what it is. I've used this gun in a lot of different situations. It's my favorite one to use, but at the same time, I'm not allowed to just sort of sit over in a corner for the entire time and be able to enjoy that weapon. You want to keep using that. You have to keep moving around the map, or in my experiences, the best way to get more primary ammo is to get killed. That always works.
That does work.
Repository of
Yeah.
ammo.
Well,
This is
I
wait
think
for him to die.
yeah.
Oh, I got it.
This is empty, and they just sort of walk out in the open.
Take me.
Yep, face and hands extended to the sky.
We've talked a lot about competitive multiplayer too, but this kind of threads through, some of the other modes too. Is you have this sort of level of predictability we're able to maintain, right? It's not just chaos. It's not just like I don't understand what weapons this person has because it's a pinata style or Fiesta style game, right? Like some of the early looks on paper, I was like, oh, I wonder if that's going to feel like Fiesta, where everybody just has a totally different weapon and I don't know what's going on. But they fall into nice archetypes, and you can see their silhouettes, and you understand even from like the audio, like, oh, he's got this
And
type
once
of
that
weapon.
guy kills you once with that thing, you're like, oh, you have that thing.
And sometimes even before, like I can see the silhouette of the weapon, right? Like I understand, or I see that, oh, you're a hunter, so I'm going to infer things about you, right? I'm going to guess that you have a marksman weapon, right?
well,
Like,
yeah.
and I'm
I
going to
love
get
going into Fiesta, like the Fiesta one, like you were talking about, is like that's a nice palette changer, but it was always like it was that moment of excitement of like I don't really know what someone's bringing to the table. It's kind of like that. What am I going up against type of thing?
And the difference is like nobody has to start with like the plasma pistol, and somebody else has the rocket launcher. Everybody's got a competent guns that they've chosen, right?
Exactly.
So.
But that adds to the whole defensive thing. Is like you have to be a rounded player, not just paying attention to one thing, right? You can't just focus on the one thing that you're working on, because like in the whole scheme of Destiny, you have to make sure that your build's the right way you want it, everything, all your guns are the right way you want it, because Deej is going to come to the fight, and he's going to bring something that you've never seen before. You're like, ooh, I need to go get that.
And I'm actually looking forward to that, like those types of conversations in the tower. Like, where'd you get that?
That's right.
I got this on Mars.
Sweet.
My favorite mission on Mars. Have you ever done that mission? No. It's like, let's go do that right now. That, as they say, is the end of the Bungie podcast. We
Who's
will be
they?
back.
Who's they?
Say you?
The people who say things about things when they come to an end.
they?
They say that's
I want to know the guys.
Feels like it was a little rusty, a little scrappy, but that's all right.
Yeah,
it's
that
the
was
first one
fun.
back in a really long
It was a
time.
good time. I laugh loud.
Good conversation.
Laugh out loud.
Doyle's an interesting character. Hamrick's got a very round head.
He does. It's more round than even in the Vidoc. I mean,
So when are we going to do this again, Deej?
next week.
next week?
Yeah, we are.
All right.
Or when we get around to it.
All right.
Oh,
I mean, it's been 2.5 years, so we can
might
only
lose
pick
the
up
equipment
speed.
again.
We might. We can only pick up speed from here. So,
Yeah.
All right.
but
space down here is precious.
we've broken the ice. We've cracked the ice. So, we'll see how we can flow from here.
All right. Thanks for listening.
This
Yeah,
has been the
thanks.
Bungie podcast. Follow the Bungie podcast group on Bungie.net for updates, or we'll just throw it at you wherever you live whenever we cut another one of these.
I love you, Deej.
Goodbye. none of that shit was going to make the cut anyway.
Yeah. Oh, it was all going in. The earwax conversation should have went in.
Yeah. My chair.
Yeah. He tried to get me to wear his cans.
Oh,
We
yeah.
don't
Yeah.
need that.
We were.
See?
That's gross.
It was like a good
It's
10-minute
disgusting,
conversation about it too. Gone.
Yeah. We talked about his wide stance.
Yeah.
Look at his wide podcast stance.
He's ready to rumble.
I'm bow-legged.